one of the key decisions you need to make when you build an online business is what fonts you're going to use for your business, for your logo, for your product logos, for your website, for your blog post, all those kinds of things. And there's a real important thing that people need to understand, and that is fonts are not just this generic thing that you just choose the one you want to, the one that you feel most comfortable with. There are certain rules around fonts that have been developed over the years that will help you to make those decisions well. So let me just explain a couple of things, and then those two things are going to lead to what is the best font to use for your business, or what are the best fonts to use in your business. All right. So fonts, typefaces. So here I just Googled Google Fonts, and I'm here on the Google Fonts page, which is a great place to just look at a bunch of fonts and see things. Right now, I've sorted it by most popular. All right. So I need to show you something. This, actually, the easiest way for me to do this is to show you serif fonts and what they look like. So a serif font is a font that has these little flat things at the top and the bottom of the letters that make it look like something that is carved in the top of the Parthenon or something like that, okay? It's trying to go back to that old classy look. And a lot of people say, oh, that's cool. It's old and classy. I want to be classy. I'd like to use serif fonts in my work. So again, the things at the top and the bottom of the letter. So let me just check this second. So there's a second group of fonts that are called sans serif. Sans serif don't have the little things at the top of the bottom. Let me get one where I've got a serif and a sans serif side by side. Isn't this interesting? Sorted on popular. Notice when I sort on popular, everything is sans serif. There's a reason for that. Okay, here we go. So this Crimson Tess. Notice I got these little things at the top. Notice I don't have the little things at the top. Notice I have the little things at the edge of the S, the things at the bottom of the R. This is serif type. Those things are called serifs. This is sans serif. Sans means without. Okay, so there are two reasons why we tend to not use serif fonts in online business. So let me show you this. I'm just going to go down to just serif fonts. Notice this. Besides the things at the top and the things at the bottom, and they have technical names, I'm not going to complicate things by telling you what those are. Notice besides that, you also get a thinness that happens. So notice how thin the cross is of the T. Let's go down to one where this is much more obvious. Okay, notice this. So on recognition, actually, let's go down and see if we can find some other ones that have even more of this. So come on, Don. Let's find one. Okay, here we go. Dignity. Notice the thinness of the letter Y. Notice the thinness of the tops. Oftentimes, when you're working with a serif font, you'll get vertical lines. So you get one vertical line that's fat and one little vertical line that's skinny. Why is this a problem online? Well, online, what happens is everything is based upon pixels. And when you get too small, so what happens is you tend to look at a logo nice and big, but you got to shrink it down to put it up in the top left corner of your website, or you got to shrink it down when you're going to put it on a embroidered on a t-shirt or a sweatshirt. Oftentimes you have to shrink things down, and when you shrink down serif typefaces, these thin lines quickly go to nothing. Let me just show you. This is a 55 points. I'm just going to take it down to 14. And this is unrealistic because Google actually adds width to those, and so it doesn't do that. But if I took a picture of that and then shrunk that picture down, you wouldn't, at 1/4 the size, you wouldn't see many of those lines. Notice we're already starting to have that vertical line on the W is disappearing. The top of the Y, and the cross and the T are disappearing. That's what happens with serifed fonts. That's one reason why, very frankly, you almost never want to use a serif font on anything you do on a web page, because they just don't look good at all sizes. So now let's add in sans serif fonts. Notice I can make sans serif font as big or as small as I want. I can still read them. I got to go really small, 8-point, before I start losing it and can't read that type. That's a really, really important key thing to recognize. The other thing I want to point out to you is this. Serif, when the web came into being, almost every font offered, other than Times New Roman, is a sans serif font. When you actually get into the web, go look at almost any big company's website. It's almost universally going to be sans serif without the little topsies and bottomsies. Okay, what ends up happening is every once in a while you'll get a journalistic font, because I'll tell you, there are some studies that have been done over the years that have shown that it's easier to read serifed fonts than sans serif fonts. But those studies are not done on the web, they're done in books. And people don't read for 4 hours a website like you do a book. And what we've done over the years is we've trained our eyes to appreciate sans serif fonts, to have them feel like they're modern, they're up to date, they're current. Sans serif fonts, on the other hand, are seen as old-fashioned, dotty, yes, a little classier, but the classy tends to get outweighed by the fact I can't shrink those down. So when it comes right down to it, what you really want is probably, you don't want a serifed font for your logo or the logo for a product. So I'm getting into what works best online. You probably don't want a serif font, and you probably do want 2 different fonts. One that you'll use for to use actually on your website. One that you're going to use for your headers, and one that you're going to use for the body that goes underneath them. And so a combination. So Lato is a wonderful, wonderful font to use this. Montserrat, isn't this interesting? When you're ranked on popularity, Lato and Montserrat are number 4 and 5, and we're going to throw out the Japanese one. And so this is my favorite combination. I use Lato for headers and Montserrat for the body text. Why? Headers, I oftentimes want to cram a little bit more. These are a little bit more what we call compressed or condensed fonts. So notice that whereas is probably 10%, 15% larger on Montserrat than they are on Lato, because these letters, notice the E is almost a circle. Over here, the E is definitely an oval. And so what I like to do is I like to open up the font for what they're going to read. I like to use Montserrat, and then Lato, where I might want to cram a few more characters into a line without it returning onto the next line, I'll oftentimes use this. And the other key thing to note in all these is these things come with weights. And so notice we've got a thin weight. You probably don't want to use that because it becomes too small and difficult to read. You probably want to be in the light. Personally, I use a Montserrat regular is what I use. And then if I'm going to use it in bold, I'll go to either bold or extra bold to do that. And so again, you got to be careful using really light fonts. Now, designers love light fonts because it makes it feel like things are skipping across the meadow. But again, you can't shrink them. They don't work shrunk down, and it becomes much more difficult. If you're reading this on a bright summer day, trying to sit out on your patio while you're reading on your laptop, you can't read that font. Even at 55 point, 48 point, you're not going to be able to read that font. Put it down to what you're going to be reading font at. It's probably going to be around here. You're not going to be able to read that on your patio with bright sun in the afternoon. Not going to happen. You've got to be somewhere around regular to be able to have that be readable. So those are principles. Core principles. Number one, probably not sans serif. Number two, test any font that you use, take a picture of the font, shrink it down, and see if you lose those things. Number three, you probably want to have 2 core fonts for your body copy. One that you're going to use as headers and probably going to be a bold, and the other one that you're going to use as a body type. Number 4, don't use the light versions of the font or the thin versions of the font. They just haven't got enough pixels to be readable when they get small. And number 5, don't let designers push you around. They're working a job, and then they're going to go on. They're going to put it in their resume. They're going to show, hey, I did this cool looking thing for them. They don't have to live with their work for the next 30 or 40 years. You have to. Don't ever let a designer push you around. Ultimately, it's your business. You have to control what it's going to look like, and you have to think out 30 years. Will I still be happy with this? Maybe not 30 years because things are going to change, but clearly, will I still be happy with this when I've got 100 different pages using this? Is that going to work for me? So recognize that. And I'm going to go back to one other thing that I want to point out to you, and that's this. Back to this Google Fonts thing. Don't sort on trending. That's the default, because that's going to give you junk like this. Okay, let's just take this down, shrink that down. Okay, this is 12 point, the normal size that things get done on the web. Can you read that font? Can you read Montserrat? Yeah, you can. Okay, so don't sort by trending, sort by most popular. Most popular shows, hey, it's going to be Roboto, Open Sans, Montserrat, Lato. That's what you're going to get. That's the default. By the way, this has been the default for about 8 to 10 years now. These 4 fonts have been out there for about 8 to 10 years as the most popular. Why? Because they're beautiful fonts that work for any purpose that you're trying to get them to work. They're highly readable, and they just give you a perception of classiness and quality in everything you do. So learn those basics. Serif versus sans serif. Shrink it down and avoid using light, and don't let designers push you around. There you go. I said those 3 things 4 times. I hope you got it. This is Don Crowther saying, just go do this stuff.